Going off to college is an exciting time for both parents and students. It's a time that marks the end of childhood in some ways and the launch into adulthood in other ways. It's also a time that's fraught with uncertainty and ambiguity. So, in this episode, we explore how new college students can approach their first year and how parents can support their child's new foray into college. Stay tuned and we'll discuss. Welcome to the Indigo Podcast, an exploration of human flourishing at work and beyond. I'm Ben Barron of Indigo Anchor and Cleveland State University.
And I'm Chris Everett of Indigo Anchor. For more information, please visit us at www.indigopodcast.com. Ben, I am so excited about this episode. I was filling up my cup of water. I was getting goosebumps just thinking about how, people say this is mundane, but just thinking about how incredible it is that every year, somewhere in the world, are gobs and gobs of people about to go into higher education adventure.
That's right. And it's such an adventure, and it's such an essential part of our society and our civilization. Obviously, I'm hopelessly biased in my praise for higher education, being a professor myself. But, this episode, we're going to explore how college students can, make the most of that first year and some things they should be thinking about. If you're a new high school graduate going into college, you should definitely tune in, and also some things for parents. So why don't we just dive into some advice, some things that we've learned, some things that we've read, experiences we've had that can help inform new college students how they can approach their first year. And, I guess the first piece is like, are you going to live on campus or are you not going to live on campus? And if you are living on campus, what are some things you got to be thinking about, new college students?
Yeah. So first, guys, you got to get a packing list. All right. and your university is going to give you one of these. Look at it.
Hopefully. Yeah.
And then ask yourself, do I really need all this stuff? Because I think one of the things that goes on is, first, I want to emphasize the mundaneness of this. Going to college is a completely normal, regular thing to do that people do all the time, and it's fine. And matter of fact, some of them can't even put on their pants really well. They're Filsons of the world, right?
And they still make it. Yeah.
They still make it. So as much as you're having this anxiety and uncertainty and all that stuff, that's all part of it. You are just taking part of that freshman year anxiety that everybody gets to take a big bite off of when they go. But there's many people in that same position and many people who have gone through that same thing. So the first thing you want to do is get that packing list and then ask, do I really need all the stuff on this packing list? Because part of the catharsis for that anxiety is because you want to be prepared, and there's so much unknown, right? You're like, I don't know. What's going to happen? I don't know. And so one of the things, you probably take another bite of brownie, right? To soothe yourself, right? Probably eating some crap food while you fret about your, first semester. But another thing that when it comes time, because you're leaving the house, right? If you're going to live on campus, is what if I need these things?
Right.
And you want to be prepared. That's a good thing. And one of the ways that we deal with that ambiguity and wanting to prepare is we take too much stuff.
Yeah. So don't take everything. Take the essentials. Realize that, hey, if you're missing something, it's okay. Stores still exist. You're still going to be able to get things. But, go ahead and start thinking about what do you actually want to take with you if you're going to be living on campus. Next thing you want to be thinking about is, the roommate situation. Now, this differs based upon the institution that you're going to. Some places, it may be strictly assigned to you, someone or some people with whom you'll be sharing living quarters, or you may have some choice in the matter where you can put in some preferences, or maybe you have a friend that you want to live with. Regardless, you should try to, at some point during the summer before you go off to college, try to figure out who that person is, reach out to them, at least establish some sort of contact. This person may or may not become your best friend, but at the same time, you will be living with them for some period of time. Therefore, it makes sense to get to know them at a basic level and be friendly.
Yeah, this is a roll of the dice. So just go in with low expectations on this one. Like, listen, I don't know, flip a coin. Am I going to get a total numbskull, or is it going to be somebody I enjoy? The thing is, you're in it together. Think of this as being you're on the Titanic and it's sinking, right? You're going to work together to not drown, right? And so, listen, man, I would never hang out with you in a regular day, but the gods that will placed us together during this time. So our goal should be not to drown during our freshman year and to meet cool people that we actually want to be roommates with the following year. You can have, and we use this with our clients, Ben. We call it, what kind of alliance do we call it?
This is a collaborative alliance, and you can have that with a roommate. Now, I wouldn't recommend going into that first roommate conversation saying, hey, I would never hang out with you ever under other circumstances,
Listen,
but we're going to be
stuck. To say it. You won't have to say it, because if that's the case, it'll become apparent, right? But the thing is, think about this not as we're going to be the best friends forever. It's tempting in that first blitz of emotion that you have to feel that way, but just realize this is a collaborative alliance to survive freshman year and to meet people, or maybe you want to go to a different dorm building, all that kind of stuff. This is a recon mission for what the rest of your college life's going to look like. And sometimes your recon says, oh, the ground is fallow.
Great. So that's the roommate piece. You also want to figure out your meal plan. This is a pretty basic piece. Universities have various types of ways to feed the people who live on campus, and you can purchase various options there. So look into those, get the one that's appropriate for you. Another important piece here is you want to read the stuff that you get from the admissions office, from the residence life people. All of the information that your university sends to you, actually read it and follow the advice. They're doing this for your own benefit. Believe me, the university actually wants you to come to their university, to love it so much the first year that you continue your education, that you're learning things, that you're finishing on time, all of those types of items. So do what they tell you.
Yeah, and they a lot of the stuff that gets in there is like, gosh, we're so sick of people asking us this stuff, so we put it in a packet, right? And then for you not to read it, it's murder brutal, right? So, here's another one that's kind of practical: is find out what the dolly situation is, because the thing is, sometimes that during orientation week or freshman reception or whatever they call it, they don't let you park in front of the dorms because it creates a fire hazard and you can't get the cars around. You may have to move all your gear from a parking lot a quarter mile away, right? So,
right.
And they'll have like 6 dollies or carts or whatever for 1,000 students. So get your own, borrow one from somewhere that you might, or pack everything into one backpack and that's it. Right.
That's all you're taking.
Minimal, simple life type things. Right.
Right. So just think about the logistics of how you're going to be moving your actual belongings that you have judiciously planned and packed carefully. Make sure you have a plan for how you're going to get those into your new home. And, if you need a little wagon or a little dolly, that might help you. It may not be something you need there, but just figure it out beforehand, because it'll save some. You're already going to be kind of stressed and excited and everything that first move-in day. So that'll be something practical to help you out.
You're going to have fall break, right? So if you're really missing something, just have a plan for a shipment or maybe a quick trip if possible to pick up those things. Don't go minimalist. It'll help you focus on making that transition rather than unpacking and setting up your, I don't know, Britney Spears poster or whatever. Right? There's always those guys that have, this is like rooms to go curated. It's everything's perfect. Don't worry about that stuff. You don't have to show your identity through your dorm room.
I agree. And you have time to figure those types of things out. Okay, so those are some basics if you're going to be living on campus. Now, if you're not going to be living on campus, I think there are some other things you've got to be thinking about, and this has to do with like where you are living. Let's assume maybe that you are commuting to a university that's not too far from where you grew up. Maybe you're still living with your parents. That's fine. You've got to figure out and have a good, honest conversation with your parents about kind of what that's going to look like. And I think most parents would probably really appreciate that and see that as a sign of maturity. If you say, "Hey, look, mom and dad, this is going to be different the next year. I just want to like clarify expectations about when I'm going to be around, when I'm not going to be around. What kinds of expectations do you have about how I'm going to be behaving around the house in terms of chores that you may still want me to do, or whatever you're doing in lieu of actually paying you legal tender for rent, right? What am I doing to kind of still be a contributing member of the house and have that good conversation? Because something is very different now. You're not in high school anymore. You're going somewhere to further your education. But if you're still living at home, you've got to figure that out. And I think having a good conversation about it earlier rather than later is helpful.
This is especially important. So, like, I come from a divorced family, and especially if you have different family arrangements at home, maybe your parents are in a bloody, horrible divorce that's really bad, right? You need to, at this point, I want to give you permission right now to prioritize yourself and your education. And if you're coming from a toxic family, if you're coming from bad relationships, things like those things, if you're coming from someplace that isn't the best place to get your lunch, this is the one time you get to super duper prioritize creating a foundation. Listen, if you feel obligated that you need to go back and help somehow, that's fine. Build your house first because you can't help other people if you're drowning yourself. And a big way, and there's huge amounts of data, if you're fortunate enough to be able to get into a college, go to a college. You're in the top echelons globally already.
Just right there, just by doing that. Absolutely. Right.
Take care of yourself there and get in and do well in college so you can do well in life. You'll be way better positioned to deal with the shenanigans and you'll be more cognitively developed so you can actually see the right things to do, all those kinds of things. So anyway, just had to throw that out there. Not everyone's coming from a good family, and that's okay. This is a time where you get to move into adulthood.
Yeah, and I think being proactive about the approach and the planning for that is a helpful thing you can do as you're moving into this new phase of your life going into college. Another thing is you really need to think about your schedule and make a schedule that's going to work for yourself. And this is especially important because you have more unstructured time, right? In high school, you've got to be there at certain hours. It's much more regimented. In college, it's like, here's when your classes are, and that's about it, right? You show up to your classes, and we'll say, preview of coming attractions, go to your classes. But other than that, your time is kind of your own. You should make time, especially during that first semester, for working on your schoolwork, right? Saying, look, every night between, let's just throw it out there, maybe from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., I will be studying, I will be working, I will be reading, all of those types of things, because it's not just about going to class and then kind of, oh, I have a test tomorrow, I'm going to study for it. These things require a lot of outside work, and people aren't going to be making you do it, really. It's up to you now. So time management is absolutely critical.
And give yourself some grace. That means you're probably not going to be awesome at this stuff right out the gates. And so the first thing is don't take too many classes your very first semester of your freshman year. Sometimes you're going to have you're going to maybe a little depressed and not even feel like going to class or studying that day. You have all these emotions and things you're going to have to navigate. Maybe you got to break up with an old girlfriend that you left back in hometown, right? These kinds of things will require emotional bandwidth. Be kind to yourself by being kind with your schedule.
That's
Maybe
right.
avoid early morning classes too. If you can, 6 a.m. class, no go.
I don't think there are many universities that have 6 a.m. classes, but there are a lot that have 8 a.m. So another thing that if you're not living on campus that you want to be cognizant of is that much of the learning experience that happens in college, in university life, happens outside of class. And if you're not living on campus, if you're not careful, you could potentially miss out on some of that. So still try to be on campus, right? Still try to be around. Just because you live somewhere else, because you're driving, back to your home or wherever instead of walking to the dorm, you can still benefit from the connections, from the experiences that happen on campus. you can still be around. And I would encourage you to try to build that into your schedule. And this will kind of emerge organically as you kind of move through and see what's available and what you're interested in. But I would encourage you to do that.
Right. And so, while you're figuring that kind of stuff out, one of the things that a lot of people are doing right now, because the student debt load is high, right? And maybe you just don't, you didn't get a full ride scholarship or something like that. You might have to work while you go to school. And so make sure you're super realistic about that. If you can get into work study, that's great if that works out for you. But Ben, like you've had some experience with students working and stuff.
Sure. So I've had students both, I mainly teach graduate students, but I've had some classes that I've taught with undergraduates. And even there, both at my prior employer, Northern Kentucky University, and at my current employer, Cleveland State University, you'll many times have students who are working, and that's either to support themselves while they go through college, or just to make money and get experience. I've come across students, though, that sometimes will have a full-time job working 40 hours a week, and they're trying to take like 5 or 6 classes a semester. It is impossible because of just the time constraints to get the most out of those courses if you're really trying to do that. It's not going to work out well for you in the long term. So really try to be realistic about how that's going to work out for you. Realize that some courses may take more of your time than others, but all of them will take a significant amount of time outside of the classroom. Just because you're in class for 3 hours a week doesn't mean that that class is only going to take you 3 hours a week. In fact, it's going to take you quite a bit more outside of class to be ready to read all of those types of items. So be realistic about it. Plan your time accordingly.
And it's okay. If it takes you a little bit longer to graduate, when you go to employers for the first time, oh, you were in college for 6 years. That's right. I was working full time. That is a banging testimony to your commitment and getting things done, So you don't have to finish this super duper fast, and don't get bad grades and look like a bad student, because your first referral sources often when you're getting that first job out of undergrad are your professors. Filson does a good job. Filson was a great student, or the networks that you get introduced to.
Right. Another practical point, if you're heading off to college this fall, starting off for the first time, is go to orientation. Most universities and colleges that are worth their salt, have some sort of program. Maybe it's a couple days, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a day in the summer, something to get you oriented towards what you're going to experience. And this will be full of probably some fun things where you get to meet some other students, but also you're going to get some good advice on just practical nature of what you're going to be going through. So go to the orientation. Along with that, there are going to be a whole bunch of other campus resources that you need to get familiar with and you need to actually use. Things like the writing lab, the writing center, right? If you're not that good at writing, there are places at most universities where you can get some individualized tutoring on a writing assignment, and it'll be invaluable for you, especially if you do that early on, because then if you really learn, oh, well, these are some things that I need to work on with my writing, and here's how to fix them. Do that early on in your freshman year, and then you're probably going to be pretty good to go as you move forward. So do that, and as well as any kind of other tutoring or study support systems that are out there.
With how expensive college is, it's always amazing. Hey, you're paying for the whole college, but you're only utilizing class? What about the workout facilities, the writing lab, the free tutoring, all of this stuff you're paying for? Guys, you should be using it. And it also reminds me of like the Disney movie Pinocchio, So sometimes you'll see older classmen, right? Juniors, seniors, right? Saying, oh, yeah, we got you're a cool freshman. Come hang out with us. Miss your orientation stuff. This is like, so when Pinocchio, they go to Jackass Island, right? And they smoke and they play games all day and they turn into donkeys rather than real humans. Watch out for those bad influences that will be there in your freshman year. Oh, I'm in the cool kids group. Oh, they want me to join a fraternity. Oh, they want all this stuff. Don't be that donkey. right? Become a real human. That's what that Disney movie Pinocchio is about. And this is your first time to avoid Jackass Island and do something good with your life.
That's great. Another thing that you want to do, and I would advise anyone going into college to do, is to intentionally try to carve out ways in which you can get involved in campus life. So, regardless of whether or not you're living on or off of campus, there's a lot of learning that happens there. And these are the social organizations, right? Just meeting people, other types of clubs, campus organizations that exist, professional organizations. Maybe there's something for your academic discipline. Sports that you can get involved in, intramural sports, playing, ultimate frisbee every, Tuesday at whatever time. I mean, those types of things can be beneficial. You get to meet people and kind of broaden your horizons. Other service or religious organizations that exist on campus. These can also be great ways to make connections, to figure out more about yourself and about life and just have a good time.
And you're leaving your social circle behind.
Right.
Right. And that's part of what makes college so amazing. That's part of it. But that being said, don't just be Mr. Cerebro over there and always cracking the books and not talking. You have to feed yourself socially, spiritually, emotionally, all of those ways. If you're having a hard time, there's generally free counseling at these universities. Go ahead and get in a few therapy sessions just to make sure you're calibrated. You don't have to be really in the depths of despair to just check in with a therapist to make sure that you're calibrated. But think of the whole person approach here to your education. Yes, you're going to learn some cool stuff, but you also need to take care of your emotion and emotional well-being. And the other piece, Ben, we were talking the physical well-being. I went to college and it was like, man, there is a buffet at every meal.
All you could eat buffet.
if I want pizza and ice cream for breakfast, I could probably have it, And this is not, don't emotionally eat yourself into the freshman 40 or 30, more
Right.
than the freshman 15 or something, right? There can be some changes, but get plugged in with eating right.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, keep yourself physically in tune, exercise and sleep and eating right. Those are all great things for you to be mindful of as you go through this journey. We mentioned a few different areas on campus, some different resources already that you need to be familiar with, but a few others that you should be familiar with and really get to know are places like the advising office. So some universities or some colleges will do this centrally, right? Where there's like a group of people who do advising. They help you understand what courses you need to take next and those types of things. Other universities actually have professors who also do advising, and you might be assigned to one of them. Regardless, figure out how it's done at your institution and make use of it. Make use of your residence life experiences, right? So if you're living on campus, there's going to be someone, usually an upperclassman of some sort, who is in charge of helping keep good order and discipline, so to speak, in the dorm. I did this for my junior and senior years of college, and it was a phenomenal experience, a great learning experience for me, but also interesting to try to help develop and help everyone around me. So get familiar with those resources. The registrar, that's how you sign up for classes and order your transcripts, those types of things. We mentioned the counseling center, tutoring resources. All of those different things are part of what your institution has put in place because they want you to succeed. They want you to succeed, right? One thing that universities are oftentimes measured on is what's called the 6-year graduation rate metric. So, how many of their students are sticking around and actually graduating within 6 years, right? And they want you to finish. They want you to move through academically, financially, etc. So make use of those resources and be familiar with them.
Yeah, this is so important. Another thing on the RA situation is the RA is not just the Gestapo that keeps everything straight in the dorms. Make a good friend out of your RA, because if you have roommate problems, maybe you drew the short stick in the lottery of roommate selection, he can be there as a resource to help you navigate some of that conflict and those kinds of things. Also a good resource for getting you plugged into the broader network. So RAs, they're amazing people. They don't get that position being a numbskull, right? So make that RA your ally.
That's great. You also want to try to understand and get used to a different set of rules for how the game of education is in college versus high school. So things are different now regarding your classes and your professors. And one of the biggest things that I would recommend to new college students is for them to realize that they need to have a different mindset, right? It's about you, right? It's about you going after the learning. It's don't expect to just be spoon fed everything, right? Develop those high quality relationships with your professors early on. It's going to yield benefits for you, right? And one beautiful thing about the way that most college courses I've been around for decades is that they professors create something called the syllabus. It's an outline of everything that's going to happen that semester, everything you're going to need to read, everything you're going to need to do, a schedule, and that can help you kind of schedule your time as well. It's not a surprise, kind of what's going to happen a lot of times in these courses.
Yeah. You're driving your education, which should be why you're there in the first place.
Yeah.
I need to get this paper so I can just make more money. Yeah, I know a lot of people like that, and some of them do okay. But this is your time to really go grab life by the horns and learn all the cool crap you wanted to learn about. It's out there. You're like, man, I want to know about, the epicuritic theory of the universe. Okay, I'm going to take some courses and get some reading on this. Now, the thing that can drive, because the class is just the minimum, right? That's the minimum bar. Get to know your professors. They have PhDs and a lot of research time under their belt. So if you're interested in something in class, you can go. I did this all the time. My professors would give me reading lists. Hey, I'm super interested in that. Where if I want to go find out more that's beyond the class, would you like me to read? And they'd make reading lists. And I did so much reading outside of class. It was curated by these really smart professors. It was awesome. I probably learned more outside. The classes were good, but in dialogue and doing guided readings from my professor than I did actually in the classes as a whole.
That's great. And one easy practical thing that you can do as a new student to get to know your professors a little bit is to simply visit them for a short period of time in their office hours. So professors will set things called office hours. It might be something where you need to set up an appointment with them, but they're happy to do it. They're required to do it most of the places that I've been around. So just set up a time and say, hey, I'd like to come by and just introduce myself. I don't know of a single professor that'd be like, no, right? I would personally be like, all right, that's pretty cool, right? Somebody just wants to come by and say hi. And, in today's day and age too, it may be a quick Zoom session or something like that, right? But you can go by and just take 10 or 15 minutes. It may turn into more, whatever, just to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is what I'm interested in. I understand you teach these classes that are interested in this. I just wanted to introduce myself and, what kinds of advice might you have for a new student or something like that, right? Just start a conversation and then be done with it. But at least then you've broken that kind of ice, so to speak, and you can go back to that professor if you have an issue or a question or just want to say hi later on in the semester. Because at the end of the day, I think at least and I think all the professors that I know, we love to see our students succeed. So get to know them a little bit.
And you're people too, right? You're not some kind of automaton there. These are the people that are curating your learning, guys. Develop close like I still know hobbies of a lot of my professors that I really vibed with. And they help me make early career decisions and stuff like that and not cut myself when I'm young and inexperienced. So it's a broader, this is the beginning of your professional network.
Exactly. And if you're having issues with the course material, don't wait until the end of the semester to tell your professor. If your class has a teaching assistant, which might be, a graduate student or someone who's helping out the professor, that person can be a resource too. But go to them right away because especially in a course in which the knowledge might be cumulative, right? So if you don't get something in week 1, it's really going to bite you in week 4, right? So you really want to make sure you sort those things out early, have those conversations. Don't wait until the end and say, I don't know what I'm doing.
The professor already knows you're struggling. They'll know, like out of 40 students, I've got these 3 that just aren't tracking what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's where you can have this conversation around, maybe I bit off too many classes. And you can have a realistic conversation about a professor. Hey, based on how I'm doing, I think I might should drop this course. What do you think? And they can have, you'll start to have some of those challenging conversations. That being said, dropping courses, there's a threshold between full-time enrollment and part-time enrollment. If you have student loans, you have to be fully enrolled. Just make sure you're aware of what that threshold, so you don't accidentally drop a course that gets you in trouble administratively.
Right. Yeah. It could mess up your financial aid. It could mess up your scholarships. So be aware of that. Just kind of a really positive thing. I think something to keep in mind is, there are no speed limits anymore to your learning. When you're in elementary school and you're in high school, the teachers, because there's so many people at one time going through, they have to kind of teach to the middle or maybe even kind of the bottom of the class to make sure everybody gets through. Those rules don't apply anymore, right? When you're in college, you can learn as much as you want, and there's nobody who can say that you can't. And if you really want to dig into something, maybe you have a favorite professor or somebody who really teaches an interesting course. Find out what they do research on, or read something they've written and go talk to them about it, right? I want to encourage people to really open their horizons and their their conceptions of what's possible for themselves. This is a great time to do it.
Yeah, the speed limits thing's amazing. And so think about that. If I could, what would it look like? If I was really going fast in my education, what would that look like? And then do those things. That being said, there's no shortcut to real learning.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to expect you to know some stuff once you come out of college. One of the questions I like to ask, somebody that doesn't have any work experience that just came out of college, or maybe just, a basic job kind of work experience, is, hey, tell me the coolest thing you learned during college. You got out, you were there 4 years. What was the coolest thing? It doesn't even have to be related to class. And I can't tell you how many students are like, and it's not going to work here, is my view. Like, if you can't speak to the 4 years of your college and say, you know what, I didn't learn a whole lot, but there was this one awesome thing that changed my life, you're just not engaged. But that being said, the no shortcuts pieces is no cheating. Do not cheat. We see this over and over and over. And I've seen, even in grad school, some people that did some plagiarism stuff.
Yeah, here's the thing. So it may have been common in your high school for people to cheat, either, looking off of people's papers or trading answers somehow, electronically or otherwise, or maybe plagiarizing, copying stuff down and putting it as part of a paper. The thing is, in college, if you do that kind of stuff, it can get you kicked out, right? That's not something you want to have happen. And
try speaking
there's
to
a
that
whole
in a job
process
interview.
at any university for how this works in terms of, the process for violations of academic integrity. Get familiar with what's going on with the academic integrity policies at your university and follow them. Don't even think about violating those. It's better to get a bad grade on a test than it is to get a 0, which is usually the minimum that a professor is going to do to you if you cheat on an exam, for example. Furthermore, there's some increasingly effective types of software to detect plagiarism in papers. When I assign papers, it automatically goes into a database that then marks up it highlights, literally, I can see it on my computer screen. It highlights matches between your paper and papers that have been submitted elsewhere, other websites, all over the place. And I can very quickly, this is a 63% match with outside resources. This might be a problem. And I can go in and I can see what's going on. Sometimes it's something that doesn't matter. Sometimes it really does matter. And so don't cheat. Don't cheat. Don't cheat.
Yeah, imagine trying to explain that to an employer. Hey, so you're at this university and then you weren't anymore. What happened? Oh, I'm a filthy cheat. Yeah, there's no good. There's no way to paint that pig, So don't do it. And on the social front, be social, but also be careful. you now have all the rope in the world to mess up your life, right?
Yeah.
So booze, like, that's super commonplace in a lot of campuses. Like, you need to do some research about unit of alcohol versus time, right? If you didn't
Yeah.
grow up in a family that drank, you just need to get some education around how the booze thing works, how field sobriety and driving.
Oh yeah. I mean, a couple things I would just if I were talking to my own child, I would say don't drink. I would say especially don't drink and drive. Be very careful whom you're around if there's drinking going on, right? Because bad things happen when college kids get drunk together.
I had an honor code that I had to sign at my university because they didn't allow drinking. And that's
Yeah.
fine. But if you're under the age of 21,
In the
you
United
should not
States.
be drinking, right? In the United States. Now, do kids do it? Yeah. Are they
Yeah.
drinking in high school? Yeah. Do they have fully developed executive functioning in their brain? No.
No.
And so that's a cocktail for life choice limiting decisions that are just bad.
Yeah, there's just a lot of negatives that can come with it, right? In terms of risks to your own health and safety and the ability to make good decisions. So be very careful with alcohol and other substances. Another thing to be careful with, credit cards. The credit card companies love to get college students signed up for credit cards. They may offer you a free t-shirt even to sign up for a credit card. That's not necessarily a reason to get a credit card, because if you get that credit card and you start using it and using it unwisely, you can start to accumulate credit card debt, which is a very, very ugly thing and can escalate very quickly.
Yeah, you think your student loans are bad. Now you have an unsecured credit card with a 30% interest or something. You are the sinking Titanic. You can't even have a collaborative alliance to get you out of that one. So, and they hand them out like candy. But let me tell you this, because I really didn't do the credit thing until like my junior year of college, and I had no credit. I wanted to buy something, wanted to purchase possibly a vehicle or something. And like, well, do you have like a boat payment or anything? I'm like, no, I pay cash for everything. What a boat payment for a 19-year-old. Come on. So a good way to do this is to get, and key point, low balance. So they may offer you a $2,000 or $5,000 credit limit. I want to encourage you to set that limit to like $200 to $500. All right. And then just pay it off every month. And by the in full, then you're done. If you need money for spring break, some guys would donate plasma for cash and stuff. Get an extra job, but don't swipe something that's nothing but Instagram memories on your credit card. Just don't do it.
That's right. Good advice. College is certainly a time to broaden your network. I would say that this is a prime opportunity for you as a new college student to carefully choose new friends, right? And maybe you had a high school experience and you're just like, I didn't really like high school and I'm looking to reinvent myself. Well, guess what? Here's a great chance to do it, right? Choose good friends, people who have similar values to you, people who have similar interests. That's the wonderful thing about college is, especially as you start picking majors, you start getting involved in things, like people are self-selecting into things that make them interested in similar stuff. And you're going to benefit from that. So, use this as a time to start broadening your network. I mean, I have really great friends who I first met, during that August of 1998, when I first went off to start my freshman year of college, and still wonderful friends to this day. So, this is a good chance to make that happen.
This is where people will not only know you by who you are, but they'll know you by who you spend time with, right?
Yeah.
And this is like, that's the whole Pinocchio thing. You act out with a bunch of drinker, boozers, smokers, and don't go to class. Well, you become a jackass rather than a person. So, and also these are your network. Ben, how many people do you know from undergrad?
Oh my gosh,
still friends with?
A lot,
right?
Yeah.
And this is, you get to see these people because in the business environment, people can curate their image. But here you get to see how they live, act, the way they ethically break up with a romantic interest, the way they cheat or don't cheat, the way they handle their classes and other relationships with care, the way they participate in charity, all of this kind of stuff. And it might be lonely. Maybe you land on a bad floor in your dorm and there are a bunch of people of not the best integrity. Well, that's okay. Find your people. Find the kind of people, because that's going to be your network and that's going to self-select. It's the same thing when you land into a company and they've got a toxic culture. It's a bad place to live. That's where all the psychopaths and unethical business weirdos, the Bernie Madoffs, end up. It will curate and save you from dealing with these bad situations, just because nobody in your network would do that. Nobody,
Right.
Ben, how many inside traders are in your network? None.
None.
Right? Because that's not the kind of people, right? That's why I want to hang out with Ben, because he's a good guy. I want good guys to win, right?
Yeah. So, another thing that you want to keep in mind as you're starting your first semester is go to your classes. Like, this may seem obvious, but it may feel kind of optional, and other people around you might be skipping their classes, but especially go to those first classes. You may not want to buy your books right away, just because they can be rather expensive, unless your instructor has, contacted you and you have a really good idea of which books you definitely need, and you know that they're going to be used in that course, and that's all up to date. Then you can go ahead and get your books. Sometimes you might be able to get an older edition of a textbook, and it might be okay. You can ask your professor about that, and it could be a lot cheaper. So go to those first classes, and by the way, I would advocate always going to class. I think it's a great thing to do. There's a lot that happens there that's going to help you out.
Yeah, if you got to go to your university professor hat in hand about struggling in their class and you don't have perfect attendance, good luck with that, buddy. I mean, he's probably not going to help you anyway, but if he was ever inclined to help you and you've missed class, no, it's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, I literally have had students who maybe haven't participated much in the class or at all, and then towards the end of the semester, they want to know how they can make things up. And, I've dealt with
Try
that.
again.
My wife is also a professor. She's dealt with that. And it just doesn't bode well for that student, because first of all, they're going to be very behind, and there may not just be enough runway left in that class for them to get up to speed and really succeed. So go to your class.
Right. I knew people that would say, "Oh, I don't go to my first class till the end of drop ad period," and that's just not setting the tone for your life that you want to set.
That's right. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is, if you think you're doing poorly just because you're not getting along with a professor, right? This is a time for you to be a professional. This is a time for you to practice those skills of doing your best and having a collaborative alliance with that instructor to try to get through the course and to learn something and to finish. Also, don't just pick classes to take just because your friends are taking them, right? Now, that may be if they're also taking something because you have a bunch of super smart friends and they're like, yes, this is a great class, that might be a reason to take it. But just because you have a bunch of friends taking a class, probably not the best reason to take one. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, so ratemyprofessor.com. It's a website where people rate professors.
Yeah, no one uses that anymore.
Professors I know, that's so like circa 96 or something, right?
Yeah.
But the whole idea is professors are people too, and they'll have kind of reputations. Ooh, Ben's really hard. He's brutal, XYZ. You're going to have to navigate these kinds of relationships in the workplace and in life. So sometimes there'll be some kind of like, in order to graduate with this major, you have to take this one class with this one professor that nobody likes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you that professor probably knows that nobody likes me. They might even relish in it. All that kind of stuff. That's fine. This is a time for you to practice your professionalism and just get through it. It's one of the better lessons in life.
Right. Now, in college, at some point, you should be choosing a major, right? And this may be, maybe you want to major in biology or business or something like that. It's okay when you're just starting off to not have that sorted out immediately and know exactly what you want to do, because you have a little bit of runway time. You have, you're going to be taking kind of like the basic courses that everybody has to take. Usually these are called core curriculum classes or general education courses. However, you should be actively thinking about this and saying, what do I want to major in? What do I want to be interested in? What kind of career was this going to lend itself to? How's this going to set me up for my success in the future? So that you can choose some sort of major at earlier rather than later. Because if you wait too long, then you might have to backtrack and take extra courses. It may take you longer and cost you more money to actually finish your education.
Right. And I think I just want to acknowledge that that can be really scary with the amount of
Yeah.
debt that you're taking on to say, well, what are you going to major in? I don't know. I'm going to figure it out when I get there. But I want you to just pause and think that's actually okay,
Right.
right? You are not committing to, well, this is it. You're committing to this is the beginning of your scholarship and committing to a life of lifelong learning. We call these people lifelong learners. They're always studying, they're always learning. At some point, you'll need to make a decision about something you're going to get some expertise in and start down that path. Now, you'll also need to couch that versus, hey, I actually got to pay off these student loans. So if learning and committing to learning is not something that you're just thrilled about, the idea of just learning for the sake of learning, because smart people will shift. I mean, the early computer science people are all like history majors and art majors and stuff, a whole bunch of different things. You can make those shifts. But if you're not a lifelong learner, you might want to just pause and say, you know what, maybe I go into the military for a year or two and go on this kind of existential journey. But if you're a lifelong learner, I think it's okay. Go ahead, matriculate into college and you'll figure it out because you're smart and you're a learner.
Yeah. At the same time, keep in mind that your freshman year GPA, your grade point average, that actually does count. So don't just blow off your freshman year. Take those initial courses, do well in them, figure out what you want to do, or at least get some direction. Ask a lot of questions. Ask your professors, ask your friends' parents what they do, right? Those types of things can really be informative. As you're moving through your courses, one thing to keep in mind is, let's say you're struggling in something and it's like, I just can't do this paper and professor won't grant me an extension on my deadline. It's better to turn in something than to turn in nothing on assignments. Keep in
And
mind
follow
that,
up with that professor. Say, listen, I know I turned in, this was a pile of garbage. That's why you go see him during the office hours. So he knows that, you were a numbskull, but hey, I'll take 70 rather than 0.
Right. Just because when you calculate averages, by the way, we're not going to get into it here, but you need to know how to calculate a weighted average before you go into college, because that's going to help you understand what your grade is. I can't tell you how many times I get students who email me and say, can you tell me what my grade is? It's like, you have all your grades. You can calculate what your grade is. A weighted average. Go Google it and figure it out. Anyway, to turn in something is better than nothing. As you're moving forward into college, be open to the new territory that's there. It may sound really tough, but your old high school friends may not be the ones who are going to propel you forward or the ones who are going to help you out. So be open to new relationships, new friends. And you know what? College isn't actually that bad of a time to be looking for significant others either.
Yeah, and we may get stones thrown at us from some listeners of this show, but college is an awesome time to get married. Or at least meet the person you're going to marry. And then after you graduate and get a job and show their parents, or whatever family situation, that you're not a, drooling numbskull that can't earn cash, right? Then get married, right? But this is a wonderful time. And I recommend that you do some evidence-based reading. Well, the first book I'd recommend around marriage would be The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. That's evidence-based book, but you need to educate yourself on marriage and relationships. And you're in a target-rich environment, guys, gals, non-binary pals. Get out there and date, meet somebody you might want to do a solid life with. Because if marriage is for you, I mean, getting married and staying married is one of the best things you could do for your physical, mental, and emotional well-being, and also for your lifelong wealth.
Yeah, that's very true. It's very true. So keep that in mind. I'd also recommend that, especially during that freshman year, start to be even more careful about your social media. Remember that you're building this record that could very well follow you into the future. And, don't do things that even if someone were recording you would get you in trouble, but just be careful about the stuff you post. Be careful about what you're sharing. Be smart about all of that. And one thing, that my dad actually said to me when he dropped me off at college is something along the lines of, this is a time for you. This is your job now, right? And I get it that a lot of people also are working full time and maybe taking classes part time or full time or trying to balance it too. But if you're in a situation where you are full time in and you're not necessarily working at the same time, right, this is a time for you to really be selfish, actually, in a good way, and develop yourself. This is the time for you to learn, to broaden your horizons, to figure out what you want to do and how you want to make this world a better place. And so really embrace that. I think that's just a good, positive way to go into it.
And in the line of being careful with social media, broadening your horizon, not being a giant boozer when you're underage. Like at 18, you're now an adult.
Mm,
And
legally.
so if you post something on social media in 6th or 8th grade, okay, he's an undeveloped little kid, right? But as an adult, you're like, why is this behavior at age 19, 20 happening here?
Right.
There should be this is when you're going to polish up and finalize these character and integrity issues and telling the world who you are and who you want to be.
Awesome. So let's pivot now. We've talked a lot about kind of advice for students, people who are going into college for the first time. Let's talk a little bit now about parents. And obviously there are books written and, much ink hath been spilt on this topic of how parents can support their children. But let's talk a little bit about some basics here. And I think, one of the first ones is this is a process of letting go. So, don't be a helicopter. Don't be a Klingon, as you said, Chris, as we were talking about this episode. Save being the Klingon for the Star Trek folks, right? Be there for your kids, but don't harass them by phone. Don't try to be there for every single moment. They have to figure things out for themselves now.
Yeah, and this is a time for you to turn towards yourself and model the growing up behavior for your student, right?
Mm,
So if you're freaking out or like, well, I just need to. It's been 2 hours and I haven't heard about how they are, or whatever it is. You may need to do some research and reading and some catharsis and self-care, some therapy. We've got a list in the show note of 20 books recommended by the University of Michigan for parents on navigating this change. Everything from relationships to finance to, that kind of separating kind of process. As a parent, you need to model that weaning away process for your student. That being said, there's whole psychology books written on family of origin issues. If you have family of origin issues that might be impacting your student, you are the adult first. You need to sort and manage them yourself. So that means if there's some conflict in the home unit, you need to kind of keep that shrapnel from affecting your college student and manage that as the adult and head of your household.
right, right. Kind of a practical thing, and this has not happened to me actually, and but I have heard of it happening to some other colleagues, some other professors. Is don't contact your child's professors directly. Don't. So first of all, if you have not signed a legal release, they can't even acknowledge whether or not they have your kid in class. So it's just not going to bode well. Don't do that. At the same time, be there for your kid, right? Recognize that this is a time that is fraught with uncertainty and ambiguity, and they're going to have some anxiety. So be supportive to your kid as they're starting to go through that, and help reassure them that it's going to be okay.
Right. Some of that might be also being very available for them, but not available all the time. If
Mm,
you have a standing golf game, keep your standing golf game. Oh, I called mom. Mom's at golf from 2 to 4 on Thursdays. I'll have to wait and call her after. These are the kinds of things where you just model that separation and that professionalism that you want to see your kids have. But like, listen to them. If they're feeling anxious, create a safe spot for them to say, actually, I'm really nervous about this test. and let them know. Like, so if you read some of those books, you'll be able to speak with authority. Hey, by the way, I was anxious when I was a college student. I bet you all your peers are anxious right now, no matter what they show on the outside.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And that's true too. Another thing is just be knowledgeable about what the particular institution that your child is at has in terms of resources, so you can direct them to them. It's junior year, it's senior year, and you're trying to think. And I'm jumping ahead here, but you're thinking about careers. Have you visited the career center to understand these things? Oh, you're having some, issues with stress management and so forth. The counseling center is actually really good at your institution. Here's the contact information. Try to help them with those types of items by being knowledgeable about them yourself. Another thing is, stay engaged with what they're doing without being overbearing. Know what classes they're taking. Ask them about them. If there's a parents' weekend or something like that, show up if you can. Those types of things can really be supportive and helpful for your student as they go through this first year.
Now, I'm thinking of one person whose parents didn't show up at their college event, and they still remember it to this day, decades later. So
exactly.
And they may say, "No, I don't really want you to come," but they don't know. You're a parent. You just go. It's mandatory. That's the one time you do get to be annoying to your student in the classroom environment, right?
That's right. Most universities and colleges have some sort of guidance and information for parents just on their website because, frequently asked questions and forms and other types of things. I put a link in the show notes to the one that we have at my university, at Cleveland State University, so you can understand that a little bit and get to know what it looks like. Seek that out. Use it. It's there for you, right? And along the way, hey, as a parent, it's not a bad idea to kind of get to know maybe some of the other parents that are around. If you're, for example, maybe your kid makes good friends with somebody, getting to know those parents a little bit, exchanging some contact information, not a terrible idea. Like, don't be weird about it. But I think, this is a time for you're navigating something at the same time as these other people. And that can be a nice resource. I know that, for my undergraduate institution, we actually would have these when I was an alum. So as an alumnus, we would orchestrate these new student orientation types of days where people who were going to that university from our general area would just come over to some alumni's house, and we'd all get to know each other a little bit. That's really great, right? Because people, need those connections, they need those resources, and it can make things a whole lot more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is all about broadening and shifting your social supports to set you up for success in a new environment that you don't know much about. All of those things are good, and it makes life sweet. Now, here's another pragmatic piece of advice. Remember, your kid is 18 and legally adult. But as somebody who's ingested plenty of new young privates into the Army, Ben, you've met tons of young new sailors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their brains are not fully formed. And it's like, I'm just now hitting 40, and I'm like, I think I'm getting to the brain formation phase now. Like, so they're gonna do some dumb things. Coach them through those dumb things. I wouldn't bring them because we do want them taking risks. We just want them to, it's like, hey, listen, you're out here taking risks, new things, new stuff. Are you taking smart risks here?
Right.
Is that, oh, well, you went ahead and asked that girl out, great, good on you. It was a disaster. Okay. But, dumb things like cheating and that's some of the things you might want to emphasize. Like, hey, listen, you're going to make dumb things. You're going to make mistakes. That's fine. There's no mistake that's not recoverable from, even cheating. However, sometimes the recovery is so obtusely painful that you just don't want to go there. So, but be there. Your job as a guardian, parent, caregiver, somebody who gives a rip, is to just be there as a coach, supportive ears, and encourager. They're gonna get there. I think I've heard this tradition actually, Ben. And do you have this in the Navy? I think the Air Force Academy does this, where they celebrate the guy that graduates last in the class.
I mean, I think that they might do something like that at the Naval Academy. I did not go there, but I don't know.
And it's funny because you look at the people that graduate last in their class. They're the bottom line numbskull. And they go and do banging, amazing, super duper awesome things. I had a lot of stuff I had to sort out in my undergrad, reality. So my GPA undergrad was actually not that great for a whole host of psychosocial reasons during that time. Um, my grad school was awesome. And I'm doing great things right now. I'm totally happy. So don't get discouraged. The focus needs to be on coaching, loving, and learning. That's where you need to be as somebody supporting a new college student.
That's great. You just want to encourage those kids to make good friends, to make good decisions. So I think let's try to kind of start to wrap this up with really some hope and with some joy. Um, you know, just thinking about this episode, we were just relishing in the thought and the hope that's embedded in kind of this whole idea of how we really in this world need educated, thoughtful people. We need them to lead our countries, our organizations, our families. And, if you're headed off to college, you are embarking on that noble journey. And I just think that is so exciting.
Yeah, it's the sweetness of everything that you want to do as a person.
Yeah.
This is the grand adventure. You're launching. Was there a movie Failure to Launch? This is not failure to launch. So even if you're the last person, first of all, if you've darkened the door of a university, you are in the top percents of our country and in people globally. If you finish a year, it keeps going. My goal and exhortation to everybody is let's just get in, hold on, finish, just finish. You know, you'll find out where you are. Like I'm no Stephen Hawking's or anything like that. I'm not a physicist that comes up with theoretical concepts. It's okay. This is just part of it. It's a tool for you, and it's the beginning of your adventure.
That's right. And you parents, you're a part of this story too. So good luck to all of you out there who are navigating this either as a parent or as the new college student yourself. One thing we'd like to conclude with is just a quote. It's a few sentences from our good friend and colleague John Kroger, who was a prior guest on the podcast. And we'll put a link to that episode that we had with him in the show notes. And John Kroger recently published an article on InsideHigherEd.com, and we'll post a link to that too. But the title of this article, this post is "We're Number One," and this is all about the higher educational system in the United States. And this is something that I think our US-based listeners should keep in mind. And I quote, "For the last decade, Universitas 21, based at the University of Melbourne, has assessed and ranked the world's higher education systems. The most recent study analyzes 24 variables, including funding, research output, employability of graduates, and policy environment. The overwhelming winner, based on these factors, is the United States, with a commanding lead over other excellent systems in Switzerland, Denmark, Singapore, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and Canada. China, by comparison, comes in at 26. This study confirms what most international assessments have noted for decades. The United States higher education system remains the international gold standard." What do we make of this assessment? Why do I bring it up? I do so because I think we all need to place our critiques of our higher education system in global perspective. As a community, we are highly committed to critical analysis. We are highly idealistic. We all want to be better. We all ache for reform. And so our rhetoric focuses almost exclusively on our failings and limitations. You can see this most clearly in the books written about higher education today. They all have titles that stress failure and impending disaster. Life of the Mind Interrupted, The Breakdown of Higher Education, The Quiet Crisis, Failing Law Schools. You would never guess from these titles that we have the best college system on the planet. Yes, we have room for improvement, and yes, we should refuse to be satisfied with our system as it is. Yes, we should all work for change. But I want, just for a moment, to remind you that for all our failings and limitations, we do have the best higher education system in the world. We have better institutions, serve more students, enjoy more academic freedom, provide more societal value, and generate more useful research than any other system. So, even as we voice our demands for reform, let's not lose sight of an important fact that we should ground our discussions. We are number one, and that matters. Our system has problems, but it is also very, very good. When we push for reform, we do so from an already established foundation of excellence. End quote. Thanks for listening to the Indigo Podcast. If you like this podcast, please consider helping us by rating us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, telling your friends about us, having us on your podcast, or mentioning us on social media. Our website is www.indigopodcast.com, where you can access more information about us and this episode. Thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.